But yeah, no, it's lovely to see you all again. And as I say, it's Shine is something that's very close to my heart. For many years, I think since you first started, I think I've been involved.
Yeah. So do you should we just kick off maybe by, do you want to tell us a little bit about kind of your story and how you got involved with travel insurance and the companies that you've developed and worked for over the years?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I was diagnosed with primary breast cancer about 16 years ago now, and when I just had a baby. And well, he was 5 months old when I was looking for travel insurance, and I couldn't get any travel insurance because I hadn't actually had the cancer removed. I'd had all my chemotherapy up front, then I was having a break, then I was going to have my surgery and radiotherapy. And my oncologist said, right, off you go, have a bit of a break with your family, be a family, and come back and we'll do the rest of the treatment. And because I actually hadn't had the cancer removed, I was deemed uninsurable. So nobody would actually cover me. I did actually work in insurance. I worked for a Lloyd's broker, and I've been in insurance all my life. So I understood risk, and I couldn't understand why I was such an uninsurable risk. After quickly checking back with my oncologist that I wasn't going to peg out in the next month. And she quickly reassured me that no, that wasn't going to happen. So that got me thinking on that holiday, right, we did manage to get cover because obviously I had connections in the insurance industry. So I did get cover, but I felt really guilty talking to people when I was getting treatment, going to see my oncologist about, I've been away on holiday and got travel insurance cover, but nobody else could. And so that's what got me thinking about how can I make this change in the market. So I did a lot of work, did a lot of research about this, tried to understand what was happening in the market. And I decided, I really wanted to make a change and develop a product that actually would offer people with cancer affordable travel insurance. I was starting with breast cancer first because that was the cancer that I had and that I understood. So so I developed that, and with the underwriter that I found to do that, they were also just about to start developing their medical screening tool called Protective. So they asked me to join them and create a product that wasn't just for breast cancer, people with breast cancer, but people with any medical condition. So we could start further developing Protective, learning what we learned from quoting people on Insurance With, the brand that I created, and learn what we learn from quoting them and where they fall outside the questioning, and so we can understand that and looking at claims and tying all that together. So so we could actually see the real risk and start underwriting that with our medical screening. So I think I created Insurance With probably about 11 years ago, maybe 12 years ago now. And that's been ongoing and that's been developing. And then unfortunately last year I was diagnosed with secondary breast cancer, which came as a bit of a shock after being sort of no evidence of disease for a good 15 years. But that sort of again, I think, renewed my fire to make sure that this was sorted out for people with cancer, because again I was meeting lots of people with secondary cancer unable to get cover, people still in treatment unable to get cover. So again, it's about making sure that Insurance With and Protective are doing what we need them to do, and that's actually looking at the risk that's posed when people are traveling, and not sort of assuming because you've got a life-limiting condition that you're uninsurable. So it's about doing that and making sure that we're still developing that and understanding all the new treatments that are coming on board, people that are on trial treatments, making sure they can still get cover, because there's an awful lot of trials going on now, and we don't want those people to be excluded from getting travel insurance just because insurers don't understand what the trial is, what it entails and things like that. So again, it's making sure that we understand all those things. So that's So that's what I've been doing. But I also do travel insurance explained, and that's how everything sort of comes together. So it's to help people understand travel insurance and where they can get travel insurance if they're struggling. So I'm sort of head of travel insurance explained, but I still look after my baby insurance with on the side, if that makes sense to everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. You're a busy woman.
Yeah. So that's sort of how it all fits together. But yeah, so that's sort of a whistle-stop tour of
Sure.
me, really.
Yeah. No, thank you. And I think, I mean, obviously, I have purchased travel insurance after talking to you, and I think I hadn't realized probably until I met you how important it is, and also all the kind of nuances. And also, I mean, I think it's a big shock when you are diagnosed with cancer, and really the thing you want is a holiday, and then all of a sudden the holiday is becoming vastly more expensive because you get these companies that are telling you need to pay £1,000 when your holiday might cost 500.
Yeah.
So I think that's really tricky. Obviously, the reason we're doing this on Zoom is we are still in a global pandemic. So I know, I imagine you've probably had your work cut out with you, work cut out for you with COVID as well. So what kind of changes have you seen, or have there been as a result of COVID?
So there was, initially everybody was scrambling to try and make sure that they had the right cover in place, the right COVID cover, because this was something that we'd never experienced before. So a lot of new covers have been added. Sorry, I've just made some notes to make sure that I cover it all off. And the main things that people are concerned about is, number one, if I catch COVID when I go on holiday, will my travel insurance cover me? And the answer is yes. The majority, in fact, I haven't come across one that doesn't cover emergency medical treatment if you catch COVID. Okay. What's less available, and this is something that I would recommend that you look for as well when you're looking at a travel insurance policy, is if you go abroad and you catch COVID and you're not necessarily hospitalized, but you're testing positive, so you can't get back on the plane, so you need to stay in the country that you're in until you test negative. So you can buy travel insurance that will pay a contribution towards replanning your travel, so your travel back home, because you won't be able to use the flight that you're originally booked. And also they'll put a contribution towards your additional accommodation while you remain in that country. Until you can get a negative result. So that's really important cover to look out for, I think, at the moment, unless you can afford those sort of expenses. But you don't know how much that's going to cost, and it shouldn't cost you that much more money to make sure that you've got that cover. But it'll just take a bit of searching around to make sure that cover's included in the policy you buy. And if you're not sure, just give the provider a call and they'll be able to confirm that for you. So that was.
Can I ask a question about that? Because if you do test positive abroad, if you have that cover, I mean, where do you go? Like, who takes COVID positive foreigners?
That would be quite difficult to have a look at it to try and find. But you could maybe get an Airbnb that you could stay in there. And things like that. Hotels are going to be tricky to try and stay in. So the hotel that you're in, if you've tested positive, because some hotels do tests for you, so they might, if they discover that you're positive. So it would be about doing that. But then the assistance company of the travel insurance that you have would be able to assist in helping you find the accommodation, so you can stay on in that country as well.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
And then the other one is, what if I catch COVID before I go? Have I got cover? And again, that cover's really common now, that if you catch COVID yourself before you go on holiday and you need to cancel your holiday, that cover is available. What's less available is if you've been in contact with somebody with COVID and you're told to isolate and you can't go, so you still need to cancel your holiday. Not everybody covers that risk. So again, that's something else that's worth looking for, because it's happening a lot now that people are asked to isolate when they're, it might only be a couple of days now, depending on your vaccine status, but still could cause you to miss your holiday, so you would want to be able to cancel it as well. So that's important cover to check that you've got, and as I say, that's not every provider that's got that, so it's worth sort of searching that out as well. And then the other thing, just another word of warning really, is what travel insurance won't cover is if your PCR test doesn't turn up on time for you to go away. And one of the stipulations of the country that you're traveling to is that you've got to produce a negative PCR test before they'll allow you in. So that's not, if you haven't got the right documentation to get into a country, that's just not covered on a travel insurance policy. So it's not something that's just because of COVID, it's just having those the right documents, it's not covered. So we'd always recommend that you take a PCR test with a company if it's recommended by your travel provider. So if you've bought a package holiday, a lot of them recommend people there, because at least you've got some comeback there. They recommended it, so they would be duty bound to help you if your results didn't come on time. And again, if you're just buying a flight and you're sort of putting your package together yourself, we would recommend maybe looking at the airline that you're choosing to go with. Who do they recommend? And then check the terms and conditions about what happens if that PCR test doesn't turn up. And I haven't found one yet that would actually pay for a missed holiday. All they will do is give you the money back for the test. But oh, wow. I've known people that have actually lost holidays, thousands of pounds, because their PCR test hasn't turned up. And there's nobody responsible. So the PCR test, it's called consequential loss. Okay. And the PCR test won't cover the consequences of your PCR test not turning up. So so that to me is the one that everybody should be looking out for and trying, make sure you can do it up to 72 hours before you travel. My recommendation would be to get it as soon as possible, just to make sure that you've got it, because you can get ones that you can turn around in 12 hours, but you could always go there if the 72 hours, the one that you started at 72 hours didn't come through. So yeah, so that would be my watch, sort of watch out for this if you're traveling and you need a
and I guess
PCR test.
Because they can come back inconclusive as well, yeah. Can't they? PCR. So I've had that myself, where you do it and then it comes back and it says, oh, you've got to do another one. So I guess if you're right on the line in terms of timing, you want to have enough. Okay, that's so that's, I mean, that is definitely the watchword, because at the moment there's no real cover for that, and it's something that travel insurance just don't cover. Is not having the right documents in place to get into a country. So that's sort of my COVID points. Yeah. Did anybody have any other sort of COVID related questions, and then we can move on to more general travel insurance related questions? Well, actually, just before we do that, I do, because we have COVID, but we also have Brexit. Just to cover off all of the kind of the major changes we've experienced in the last year, can I just ask, in terms of Brexit, one of the changes is that people previously might have thought they could get away without having travel insurance because they had an EHIC, a European Health Insurance Card. And I know that's changed since we've left the EU. So could you maybe just say a little bit about that and what people need to look out for? And do they still need travel insurance if they've got the new type of card?
Yeah, so even with the EHIC, you needed travel insurance because the EHIC and its replacement, the GHIC, which is, I think it's a global health insurance card. I think that's what it is. However, it doesn't cover you globally, so it's a bit confusing. But it's still just it's sort of the European country.
Global to the British. I don't know.
Anyway, so you still need So to touch on that, if you've got an EHIC card at the moment and it hasn't run out, that's still valid. When it does run out, you need to apply for a GHIC card, and then you would get a GHIC. So whether you've got a GHIC or an EHIC, you still need travel insurance, because the medical cover under either one of those cards, it's not what we would enjoy in the UK under the National Health. There will be things that you have to pay for. Over and above that, it might be an ambulance, it might be nursing care, depending on the country that you're in. There's a whole list on the Foreign and Commonwealth website that would tell you, what you're supposed to contribute to. And also it won't, if you're sick and you need to be repatriated back home, it doesn't cover that cost either. And also if somebody dies abroad, it won't bring their body back either. And I had this conversation with somebody. They were saying, well, I don't care if I die abroad, I die abroad, and they can throw me in the sea. And I said, well, no, they can't. And your family will be made to pay to bring your body back. They can't just make your body disappear. So yeah, it's, people seem to think that that's quite an easy thing. And then other people go and they depend on their EHIC or their GHIC card, and they say, well, if I feel a little bit ill anyway, I'll just jump on a plane and come home. And again, that's not always that simple. If say, for instance, you fall over and you break a bone, you'll need a fitness to fly letter from the hospital and things like that. So you've got to sort all that sort of thing out. So it's not just as simple as jumping on a plane, which I've seen a lot of people say that they're happy to do, and that you just might not be fit enough to get on that plane. And
I guess especially these days, if you need a PCR test as well to come back into the country, you've got to be fit enough to get the PCR test and all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah, so it's all that, and it's, chances are it won't happen. That is it. The chances are it will not happen, and you will be fine, and you will get away with it. But if you don't get away with it, and that's where I've known people that have had to sell their house to pay for the bills that run up.
Yeah.
But as I say, I also know far, far more people that have got away with it. But that's what I would call it. You're getting away with it. Yeah. And I just wouldn't recommend it, because if you're in that situation, it could cost you an awful lot of money. So I would just, want to be careful.
And just in terms of the bills, actually, and that kind of repatriation, I know, so if you don't know, or if you're not aware, we do have a guide to travel insurance that's available on the Shine website, and we're just in the process of updating that. And Fiona and her team have done an update for it. And I was reading that before we did this call, and one of the things I noticed is that the cost of air ambulances has gone up a huge amount. And so that's if you're really unwell and you want to come back to the UK, but you need to be flown specially in an air ambulance. That was already thousands of pounds, but it's even more now.
So it's if COVID's involved. So the actual cost of air ambulances hasn't increased really that much at all. But where the big increase is, if there's COVID involved at all, then it can jump up by 10, 15,000 pounds, because obviously they're going to have, the barrier nursing and things like that. So it's far, far more expensive if COVID's involved as well, trying to get you back home. So that's just a bit of,
Yeah, no, it's useful information. I will go to questions. What would be really helpful actually is if you've got questions, if you could put them in the chat, and then I'll read them and Fiona will talk through them. Just while we're on that, though, one issue that often comes up when we talk about cancer and travel insurance is this idea that if you can get an insurance policy that excludes your cancer, so actually then it's really cheap, because your cancer be fine for your 2-week holiday in Spain. Is that a good thing to do? Should we be doing that? Yeah.
No, you shouldn't. So you're not only excluding your cancer, you're also excluding anything that could be attributed to the treatment of your cancer. So, for example, I'm on different types of hormone therapy to treat my cancer, and it can cause blood clots. So if I had a DVT, if I excluded my cancer and I had a DVT, that could be attributed to my cancer. So that wouldn't be covered. I also have bone mets. If I broke my bones, if I fell over and broke something, it could be attributed to my cancer because I've got bone mets. So I would say that you really need to be very, very careful if that's what you're considering doing. Be fully aware of what you're excluding. And as I said previously, every chance you'll get away with it, every chance. But I do know people that don't get away with it and how much it costs them. and that's all I'll say. But as I say, I know lots of people that get away with it as well. But I just personally, I would never ever take that risk.
Yeah. And I suppose you're talking, you know, obviously some money for the insurance to cover you, but potentially saving yourself tens of thousands of
pounds. You might, you know, you might need to buy a policy that's maybe say £100, £150, but that will, the money that would save you having the right cover in place rather than just buying a £20-30 policy and excluding you of cancer. Yeah. And, you know, and I'm saying, you know, you might have to pay 100, you know, 150, you know, that depending on, you know, where you are in your cancer treatment, and if you've got secondary cancer or not, you know.
Yeah. It just depends. So a couple of questions that have gone at. So somebody has basically asked, do we need to take out travel insurance as a family or as separate entities? And I know this is a really important point as well, isn't it?
Yes, so we would always recommend that you travel as a family and you all take out the one policy with the person with cancer declaring their condition. Because if something was to happen, say for example, you book the family holiday and the person with cancer becomes ill and can't go on holiday, if it's only them that's got the individual policy, they would get their money back, but the rest of the family either would have to go off on holiday without the person with cancer, which is never advisable, because you'd probably, you know, you don't want to do that, and or lose the money because they wouldn't have declared the person with cancer's condition to get that cancellation cover, if that makes sense. Because I think you've got an example of that happening, Kywin.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting because although I'm Canadian, my parents spend a lot of time in Florida, and I was going to Florida every year, and I had my own insurance because it was kind of, you know, specialized in policy because I have an immune deficiency as a result of my cancer treatment. But my daughter was on a policy with my husband. But my husband often doesn't come to Florida with us because he has to work. And I suddenly, after hearing you speak, actually, I think I asked you, well, if I got sick, what would happen? And actually, you know, my daughter, nothing would be covered for her. And so we would have to figure out, would my husband fly out to get her? Would my parents fly back to the UK with her? But none of that would be covered. It would only be me in the US. That was covered. And yeah, these things come up. I mean, I also, as you know, many years ago went to Iceland and got sick in Iceland, again, thinking nothing will happen, but actually caught the flu really badly and ended up in the hospital, and realized then, you know, that was only me. If I had had to stay there, my husband and daughter wouldn't have, there was no, because they were on a different policy, they wouldn't have been able to stay with me. Well, I mean, they might have, but we would have had to pay, or they would have flown back without me. So yeah, I think that's a really important point. But also if you're traveling with friends, that's something your friends need to consider as well, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. Because if the holiday that you're going on depends on the person that has the condition, then my recommendation is that you should all be on the one policy, because if the likelihood of them not being able to go, then you would all want to cancel. So you would all want your money back. So that's, you know, in the simplistic terms, that's what I would recommend. And then also, if you're all away and say if somebody is taken ill and somebody needs to stay out with them, again, if you're all on the one policy, it helps one person say, right, actually, well, I'm going to stay with Jane, and well, you know, until she can travel home and things like that. It just simplifies everything if everybody's on the one policy. So I would always recommend it, but particularly with families, because I know sometimes groups of friends will still travel if a couple of people can't go. But I think definitely with families, and especially if you are traveling with a child on your own, it's well worth having them on that policy, because a lot of policies that you can get will fly a parent or grandparent out to support the child. Say, if, you know, you've got to go into hospital and things like that, you can get policies that have that extra cover as well. So yeah, I would recommend you all being on the one policy.
Okay. So we've got another question here that says, I plan to go away after all my treatment's done. Due to the type of cancer I have, I won't be giving any ongoing medication. So you're kind of done treatment then. Do I have to declare this when looking for travel insurance?
Yeah, yes, you will. The majority of travel insurance providers will ask you to declare if you've had any treatment for cancer, maybe in the last 5 years, some in the last 10, and some will say ever. So just make sure that you answer the questions truthfully. You'll be asked to declare the cancer if you've got no ongoing treatment, and depending on how far away you are since your last treatment, it shouldn't cost you, there shouldn't be a massive load on the policy, because basically you're sort of as fit as the next person. You just happen to have had cancer treatment, but you're moving forward now. But yeah, so just watch the wording of the questions and just make sure you're answering them truthfully. And just because you've got to declare your cancer doesn't mean they're going to charge you extra money. It's just they will know. They just need to understand the risk that's being posed to them.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Fiona. Someone else has asked a question, just picking up on that EHIC or GHIC.
Yeah.
If you have a European passport, does it matter? So you live in the UK, but you're maybe a dual national. So you're one of those lucky people that got to keep an EU passport. Yeah. Do you still need travel insurance, or should you just get one of those global health insurance cards and you should be okay?
There'll still be things that you won't be covered for in that country that you're traveling to, because they don't have a national health service. So depending on what country you're traveling to and what the health service provides there, that would be something for you to make that decision about, weighing up, well, what would cost me if I was sick? Do I need travel insurance to cover that, or am I happy to cover that myself? And depending on whether, if they were really, really sick, where would they want to be? Would they want to stay in the country that they're in? Then you don't need to worry about being repatriated home. Or if they definitely would want to come back to the UK and be treated by their UK team, then that's something you need to consider. And that's something that you're not going to get covered, as we've said, under the EHIC.
Okay. So yeah, good to look into having both.
Yeah.
So someone else has asked about the implications of brain metastases on travel insurance, and whether you're able to get insurance if you have brain mets.
Yeah. We insure lots of people with brain mets. There has been, Protective, the medical screening system that we've developed alongside insurance with, that's not been in the market since July. We're changing underwriters at the moment, which unfortunately has meant that there's been a complete lack of choice for people with medical conditions when looking for travel insurance, because everybody that's in the market at the moment all uses the same medical screening system. So if anybody's trying to look for travel insurance in the last couple of months, you'll find that regardless of where you've tried, in the majority, you're asked the same questions and the outcomes are very, very similar. We're hoping to have Protective back online before the end of the year, so that will be great. Yeah. And I know definitely with Protective, we do look at people with brain mets. Depending on where you are in your treatment, what we look for is stability. So you might have brain mets, but you're being treated, they're fine, they're stable, and we'd look for stability for at least 3 months. So yeah, you will be able to get cover. As I say, hopefully once Protective comes back online, because we take a more overall look at the general health. And again, it's about looking at stability. And I know many people that have got brain mets that have been stable for many, many years. And there's no reason why they can't go on holiday and they can't get cover.
Great. So a related question, and I don't know, so someone's asked, what locations wouldn't you recommend going to? I don't know if you want to answer that, or if you want to maybe highlight some ones that are good to go to. But are there places, I guess, and especially if you've got, cancer at the moment, you're living with cancer, are there places that you shouldn't go, or places you think, yeah, actually that's a good place to go?
Yeah, I mean, I would always recommend, what I would do is when I'm going away, it's a bit nerdy, I know, but I would always look at local health facilities to see what's available if I become sick. I think I've seen too many horror stories in my time. So, as I say, I know what can go wrong. And so I would always make sure that where I'm traveling to, you know, you've got to be realistic. You know, if you're going to go up the Amazon on a boat, likelihood is if you get sick, you're not going to get the treatment that you need. And it's going to be really difficult to get you the treatment that you need quick enough. You know, again, it all depends on, are you fit enough to be moved and things like that. You know, you might be dependent on local, very local clinics, depending on where you are. So always have that as a consideration, as a watchword for where you're going. I know it's really boring and upsetting because you feel cancer takes enough of your life away from you. And I get it. I really get it. But I still want to travel and I still want to go on holidays. But they're the type of things that I check now. Because, you know, I know because I'm on cancer treatment for the rest of my life now, I know how quickly things can go downhill. You know, I had cellulitis recently and, you know, I'm straight into hospital for IV antibiotics. What if I wasn't near a hospital that could offer that? Mm. Yeah, it's things like that. And as I say, and I get it. And you know, it makes me cross because I feel cancer's taken enough of my life away. But, you know, that's, yeah, sadly, that is what I would recommend doing.
But so, and I suppose, I mean, I guess that, you know, that means, you know, a lot of Europe is quite good to visit, but that there would also be places maybe in Asia, for example, you know, that have really good health facilities, Thailand, Singapore, places like that, where you can
Singapore's amazing.
Yeah. So it doesn't have to necessarily limit you just to across the English Channel, does it? There are
absolutely not. No, there's places all around the world. I mean, New Zealand, Australia, you know, they've all got amazing facilities. I mean, I remember looking around facilities in Singapore, and I wasn't doing that on holiday. I was just I had gone to do that. Yeah, that's not how I spend my holiday. But I was, you know, it just, the facilities they've got and things like that. And so you will find that. So always make sure, but I would always check out what the actual local facilities are, you know, the state facilities more than the private facilities, because the state facilities are licensed, whereas the private facilities aren't. And they might look all lovely with matching bedspreads and curtains, but you would want to understand what's their level of care and things like that, and their understanding of your condition. So I would tend to look for specialists and things like that. As I say, it's really boring and really dull, but yeah, that's what I do.
Thanks, Fiona. So another question here: are different cancers priced differently, or are all cancers assessed as the same risk?
No. So what we do on protective is they're all rated differently depending on where you are in your treatment, because different cancers have different treatments, and the treatments can give you the side effects and things like that. So it's about understanding that and understanding how that affects you and things like that. So no, they're not. So short answer is no, they're not all rated the same, but there are similarities to some of them, if that makes sense. It's more based around treatments and how people recover from those and get into a stable condition. Because again, it's all dependent on stability. Doesn't, you know, if you're not cured, that's not what's important. It's about making sure that you're stable on the treatment that you're on.
Great. So kind of two related questions here, actually. Somebody has said that they are on a trial for secondary breast cancer, and getting insurance has been really stressful. Somebody else has said they're on a targeted treatment, and looking for insurance for this seems to be a real gray area with insurers. So are there specific things that people need to look out for if they're on a targeted treatment or a newer form of treatment or a trial that maybe wouldn't be as easily covered or as easily understood by an insurance company?
Yeah, so I think trials definitely aren't understood as well, again, because there's so many different ones coming on board. But it depends. It's about the way we rate is we're looking for that stability. So as long as you can get stable on that trial, that's the bit that's important, is making sure that you're stable on that trial. Because it's a trial doesn't matter. It's getting you into that stable position. And as I say, we look for at least 3 months stability. So there's that about the trials, but also targeted treatment. So what is that sort of?
They haven't, Karen, if you're still online, if you want to put a few more details in the chat, I can try and come back to that question. Maybe while we're waiting for a few more details on that, someone else has said, are there policies available to cover things like winter sports? So in this case, someone said, my cancer involved an operation on my leg. My fear is that if I injure this leg, my insurance wouldn't cover it. So can this person still go skiing?
Yeah. So they can buy a winter sports policy, but just make sure you declare your condition, the cancer, the treatment that you've had for it, and that'll be covered. They'll confirm that's covered. So if you do fall over and injure that leg again, provided you've declared your condition, then that'll all be covered for you.
Okay. Someone else, so many questions here. It's great we've got you with us.
Yeah.
Someone said, I'm planning a few trips to different European countries over the next 6 months. Can I get one multiple trip insurance cover, or do I have to get separate covers for each trip? And this might depend, I suppose, where they are in their treatment and how far along they are after finishing potentially.
Yeah. I mean, lots of people with even secondary cancer are able to get annual policies now. Again, if they've got if they're stable, they've been stable for some time, they can have an annual policy, and then that would cover you. So an annual policy will cover you to go away for a maximum of 31 days, as many times of the year that you want, but you've got to come back to the UK in between. So you can't sort of go, oh, I'm going to France for 31 days, then move on to Spain for 31 days. You've got to actually come back to the UK and then go to Spain for 31 days. So it's not a 12-month cover, but as long as you're back and forward to the UK in between the holidays and they're no longer than 31 days, then your annual policy will cover you. And yeah, and lots of people, even people with secondary cancers, can have annual policies. And if you're going to Europe, I'd recommend you just ask for a European annual policy, because that will be cheaper for you.
Great. Just going back to the question we had about targeted treatment. So this is a specific targeted treatment that is it's targeting a specific mutation for lung cancer that's spread. So it's an oral treatment. It's a NIB. So it must be one of those, it's targeting a specific EGFR mutation that's spread. So is it maybe... So
it's a bit like an immunotherapy, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, you should easily be able to get cover for that. Okay. If you're on that treatment, that cover would be available to you, because it's quite similar to targeted or immunotherapy. It would come under that.
And I guess one thing to say is, if you're having trouble with the kind of the online system and the computer says no, it's worth calling up, isn't it?
It's absolutely worth calling up and running through online with the medical underwriter, because they can get a better understanding of your condition.
Yeah. And if you are going to do that, I guess it's just to say also, Fiona's touched on it. We know this can be really upsetting as well, because you think all I want to do is go on a holiday, and now I've got to call up someone I don't know and tell them how I'm affected by cancer, which can be really difficult. So maybe, brace yourself for that as well. Maybe get your notes in order, know what you want to say. But I guess, don't go into it expecting it not to affect you, because it does. And I know people who have kind of spent a couple of days maybe phoning around different insurance companies,
Yeah.
feel exhausted.
I mean, it can just be so upsetting, just constantly revisiting your diagnosis and just reminding yourself on a regular basis that you've got cancer, where you spend a lot of time trying to forget you got it. So but so it can be upsetting, but it is worth making that phone call, definitely.
Two questions here related, actually, about can you get cover to go abroad for a clinical trial? So for example, if you wanted to go to the US to participate in a clinical trial, how does that work? Is that travel insurance, or is that a different type of insurance?
No, that's a different type of insurance. Travel insurance specifically excludes traveling for treatment. Okay. So that would be a specific exclusion, and that would void your policy if that's what you were doing. But you can get travel for treatment policies. A lot of them have been set up for people that travel for plastic surgery and teeth. Teeth. You know what?
Getting like Love Island teeth.
Yeah, that's the one. So a lot, there's quite a few policies around like that, and some of those also do traveling for other treatments as well. So, but that's what you need to when you're Googling, it's like traveling for treatment. That's what you need to travel insurance to travel for treatment, and that will bring up. But it's not travel insurance. That will not cover you.
No, that's really helpful. Thanks, Fiona. Another question here, which comes up a lot, actually. So if you've got an annual policy, which you took out because things were stable enough that you can afford this annual policy, and then something changes. So you have a scan that maybe shows some growth, or something else comes up. How does that affect the insurance cover that you have?
You need to, so part of buying the annual policy is you've got to, if any changes happen, you've got to let the underwriter know. So you need to phone them up and let them know what your new scan results is, bloods or whatever it is. You need to let them know. Now they might say, oh, that's increased your risk. There might be an additional premium, or they might say, actually, we can't cover you anymore. And if you've already got a holiday booked, you could put in a claim to cancel that holiday. Because they can't cover you anymore for that particular holiday. But if you didn't want to do that, they would give you, a refund of whatever's left on the policy, because you'd cancel that policy, and then try and look for cover elsewhere. But if you make a claim on the policy, obviously you can't cancel the policy. So if you're claiming for the cancellation of that holiday, but yeah, you've got to do it. It's a bit like, when you change your car, you've got an annual car insurance. If you change your car or something changes, or in your house insurance, if something changes and you get something new, you add that to your insurance, and and you might be charged an additional premium. If you've bought a Rembrandt, they might refuse to cover you, and you might have to go elsewhere that will cover the Rembrandt in your house, that type of thing. So depending on, so it's quite similar like that to other insurances. It's not sort of just something that travel insurance does.
Okay, great. So someone else has said, I looked online a few months after my treatment for stage 3 cancer finished, and I couldn't get cover. Is there a point after treatment when, despite the cancer, you're a safe bet from the insurance company's point of view?
You should be able to get cover at least just a month after your treatment finishes. Yeah. Okay. I don't understand why you weren't able to get cover even if you've got ongoing, you might have ongoing hormone therapy, or other therapy to support you while if your immune system, etc., if that's been affected by your cancer, that's perfectly normal, and travel insurers are used to covering that type of thing. So I'm not sure why you couldn't find cover. But as your question too is, when you would be deemed normal risk. So some companies say 5 years, some say 10. I know the cover that my bank used to offer, they wouldn't cover me for the 10 years that I was just taking tamoxifen for my primary breast cancer diagnosis. They were 10 years. but I know some companies that would just, after 5 years, they would only want to know if you've had active cancer treatment in the last 5 years. So again, it just read the questions and answer them truthfully.
And give them a call if you're not.
And give them a call if you're not doing. But just because, and again, I will highlight, just because you're asked to declare your cancer doesn't mean you're going to be charged more money. They just want to understand what the whole risk is. That's all. Just declaring that it's not, doesn't mean that they're going to charge you more money.
So a couple of other questions here about actual insurance providers that would be recommended. So I know you said Insurance With would hopefully be providing insurance again, maybe by the end of the year.
Yeah.
Are there other travel insurance providers you'd recommend in the meantime? And because someone else has said they've heard it's been really difficult to get insurance kind of post-COVID. So what's going on? What do we need to look out for? When might things be?
Yeah, so I mean, I think protective coming out the market has definitely affected travel insurance for people with medical conditions, and we can see that, you know, you can see it on any forum that you go on to with people looking for travel insurance. People are really struggling, being quoted thousands of pounds for cover. It's just been really difficult. So hopefully we should be back before the end of the year. We should hopefully be protective for women back medically screening by the end of the year, hopefully. In the meantime, there's one other company called MIA, MIA, which is medical. I don't know what it stands for.
MIA.
Sorry.
Not missing in action. MIA.
Yeah.
Okay.
MIA. And there, I've had reports that people have been able to get cover. It's still not cheap, but it's cheaper than what they've been offered in the market. You know, if they've looked on a comparison site and or, you know, been looking around, that's the one that people keep saying to me, actually, a bad bunch, that's, you know, I'm getting a better price. I would recommend that they look on the Money and Pension Advice Service. They've got a travel insurance directory. I think it's called Money Helper now. They keep changing the name. Money Helper it's called now, and it's the travel insurance directory. Have a look on there. But I know people have been looking on there and they haven't been able to find policies, but that's all I can say at the moment, because that's the government set up, that's the government scheme that's been set up with the FCA, is supposedly to help people find travel insurance.
Another question here, actually, which is an interesting one. So I'm currently looking to go to France at the end of April for a short break with my husband. I will finish chemo mid-December. Then I'm expecting a CT scan afterwards. As I don't know what the outcome will be and whether I'll need any more treatment, should I wait to get insurance after this outcome, or can I get it now? I guess it depends if they've booked their trip already.
Yeah, so if you've booked your trip, I would recommend you get it now, if depending on, and then update your insurer on what the CT scan says, you know, if you need more treatment or not, and just advise them on that. I mean, one of the things that, so, you know, when you've got a secondary diagnosis, you have scans every maybe 3 months, maybe 4 months, maybe 6 months. It depends on, you know, it depends on your treatment really in the hospital you're at. But one of the things I would say is that that's not, when the question that you're asked on the travel insurance is about, are you awaiting results of scans? They mean non-routine scans, and those scans that you have to check the staging on where you are and how successful your treatment is a routine scan. It's not a non-routine scan. Okay. So you can answer that no, you're not waiting for non-routine scans, if you know what I mean. So that's trying to highlight people that have maybe got an something's happened and it's undiagnosed. Yeah, a lot of us with our treatment, it's all diagnosed and it's just waiting to see how the treatment is working. But that's a routine scan. So it's just to make sure that you make that differentiation when you're applying for travel insurance, so it's not a non-routine scan.
That's really helpful. Rebecca, thanks, Rebecca. She's just put in the chat that MIA was the company she used for a week in Malta. So that's, yeah, good to know that you got insurance that way. Someone else has asked, compared to a normal risk, how much should you expect to pay for travel insurance? So, but I guess does that depend on the type of cancer? It just depends.
It depends on the type of cancer, where you are in your treatment, how long you've been stable for, yeah, your age, and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so, and then how long you how far away you are from treatment as well.
Yeah.
And you're finished. Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone else has said, I've had cancer 10 times now. I think this is a brain tumor.
Yeah.
I'm still currently being treated for it. What are my chances of getting insurance?
Provided you're stable on the treatment that you're having, there's no reason why you wouldn't get travel insurance. You might not be able to get an annual policy though, but provided you're stable on your treatment, you should be able to get a single trip policy.
And that's because somebody else, I'm sorry, I'm just getting to that question now. Somebody else had said, is it stability regardless of where the cancer is? So even if you've got brain mets, as long as they're stable, it's the stability that matters, not the location of the metastases or the cancer.
No, it's about so, you know, say you've got brain mets and you've been stable for 6 months and you want to go on holiday and you go off on holiday, again, the chances are that something cropping up on your 2-week holiday, and you've been stable for 6 months, the longer you've been stable, the shorter that risk is, if that makes sense. So, you know, you've been stable for 6 months, you want to go away on a 2-week holiday. What are the chances that it's suddenly going to crop up in that 2 weeks? And that's what insurance is for. So if it does, you can be covered, but it's not that massive risk, because as I keep saying to people, you're not insuring my life, you're only insuring this holiday. You know, how risky is that? You're not insuring me forever. It's just this holiday you're covering me for. And I think if you think about it like that, you're just looking for cover for this period.
Sure. And in terms of stability, what you mean is your doctors would say that, I mean, do you need to provide sort of proof from your doctor to say you're stable? No,
you just, you know, you would just say, you know, say you've had, you know, 2 lots of stable scans, you know, your 3-month scans for the last two lots have been stable. You've been on the same medication for at least 3 months. Then
no unexplained hospitalization.
Yeah. Anything, as long as it's routine, it's fine. But anything that's out of routine hospitalization, then, you know, that's not saying that you wouldn't be covered, but it will increase the risk. So, for example, I was hospitalized with my cellulitis of my arm. So that wasn't making me uninsurable, but it was increasing my risk, because that's the likelihood of that happening. And now the further away I move from that hospitalization, the longer that risk gets, if you know what I mean. So yeah, and even, you know, people that are on pain medication, even, you know, opiate pain medication, again, as long as you've been on it and they've got the dose right for you, because that can be some of the questions that we get about that are people that are on opiate pain medication, and as long as you know the dose is right, and again, that's why we ask for that period of stability. Because once that dose is right, once they've played around with it and they've got that dose right, it works really well for people, and people get, you know, minimal side effects from it. So again, it's about you know, stable on your treatment, and, you know, the actual condition stable as well.
Great. Just a couple of minutes left, so we've got, I'm just gonna, I think, 2 more questions, because this has been a busy lunch hour.
It has. It's like, oh my goodness, I've never had so many questions.
It's great though. Yeah, it's every time you run an event online, you always worry no one will show up, and so we've had more than 30 people, which is amazing. So
it's amazing.
Yeah, so someone again with brain mets who said they aren't stable and that I need treatment, gamma knife or surgery every 3 months. Would it be possible to go on holiday towards the end of a 3-month period, kind of before the next scan? So I guess you have treatment, you're waiting, and then probably in 3 months' time you're going to get.
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend that you look for a travel insurance provider that actually does one-to-one medical underwriting. That's not going to be something you're going to be able to run through a quote online for. You would need to speak to the underwriter about it. They'd want to understand, that treatment cycle, how the gamma knife makes you feel, coming up to the end of it, are you feeling quite well and things like that. So that's what I would recommend. You look for somebody that does one-to-one medical screening. And there's a couple of options out there.
And then I guess the final question, actually, Fiona, someone said, so what is I guess they're asking for insurance with, not your personal phone number, but maybe they are. What's your web address or phone number for when insurance with is back online? But it's not only insurance with, is it? It's every company that uses Protective.
Protective. So there's World First Insurance as well. World First Travel Insurance and Insurance with are the two that are using Protective at the moment, or will be. So yeah, either
one of those. So insurance with, not. There's another one called Insure with.
Everybody says Insure with, but it's not. It's insurance. Insure with will give you a comparison site, and you'll get you'll either won't get a quote or you'll be charged a fortune. But it's insurance with, and they're not on comparison sites, and or World First Travel Insurance is another brand that uses Protective.
Great.
So either of those two would use Protective, and that's going to give you a choice over the other medical screening company. But I would still recommend that you look at both. So the quickest way to try and get a quick look at the market is go on a comparison site, any of the comparison sites that offer medical travel insurance. They all use the same screening system. You'll be asked the same questions and the outcomes will be similar. So go on one comparison site, just pick one, and then that'll give you a ballpark figure there, and then pick one of the Protective brands as well. And then you've almost got what the market rate should be. And then you can start tweaking the cover that you want, and maybe what the market rate could be, and then you can try other people that maybe are offering different types of cover as well. But at least try those two, and then you've got the market rate to know that's what you should be paying.
Great. Well, Fiona, we are at 2:00. So thank you to everyone who joined us. If you do have other questions that haven't been answered today, you can drop us an email at hi@shinecancersupport.org, and we will try and pass it on to Fiona and get an answer for you. And you can also tweet us or send us a message on Instagram or Facebook. We will also put this recording back up on YouTube probably in a couple of days. So if there's something that you want to revisit or you want to share it with somebody, it will be on our YouTube channel for Shine Cancer Support. But Fiona, thank you so much for this. It's been really great. I always learn a lot talking to you, and really good luck with your treatment as well.
Thank you. Well, it's all going well, so it's still fingers crossed, but yeah, thank you.
All right, we will we'll see you soon.
Nice to see you all. Thank you.
Happy travels, everyone.
Yes. Bye.